A woman walking along the beach while on her phone stumbles upon what appears to be a lifeless body, a young woman with a head wound. Shocked, she cries out for help. Morgan and Karadec arrive at the scene, where Oz and Daphne report that the victim is in her late 20s and seems to have been struck with a blunt object. Daphne explains that lifeguards attempted CPR, and though the woman was barely alive, by the time EMTs arrived and took over, she was declared dead. But Morgan senses something is off. She checks for a pulse, then borrows Karadec's watch and holds it near the victim's nose. To everyone's surprise, condensation appears on the glass, proof of shallow breathing. Morgan explains that while EMTs had found no pulse at the time, but she is in fact still alive. After digging into the evidence, the team identifies the Jane Doe as Heather Wallace, a 27-year-old graduate student at UCLA. Her boyfriend, Morris, had filed a missing person report the night before when she failed to show up for dinner. When the team calls Morris in, they're surprised to find he's significantly older than Heather. He explains they'd only been together for a few months. She had first sought him out for guidance, but as he puts it, they clicked. Selena's research uncovers more. Morris is 57 years old, living comfortably in the Palisades after selling his company for a fortune. His alibi, however, raises eyebrows. He claims he was at home choosing tiles. Morgan and Selena find it suspicious that he hasn't asked to see Heather, focusing instead on his indecision about tiles, which makes him seem detached and evasive. Welcome to Sandy's Timeline. Today we're covering High Potential Season 1, Episode 8. As always, don't forget to subscribe and like for more recaps like this. Let's dive in. Oz comes in with a new lead. While searching UCLA's records, he discovers there's no student listed under the name Heather Wallace. However, after running the victim's fingerprints, he identifies her as Penny Hall, a woman who had applied for a real estate license 2 years earlier. Oz suggests that maybe Morris discovered Penny's lies and attacked her on the beach. But Morgan urges caution. Rather than jumping to conclusions, she insists they first need to learn who Penny really is in order to understand who might have wanted to harm her. Morgan and Karadec head to Penny's apartment to learn more about her. The landlord reveals that Penny's previous boyfriend had been murdered. When Karadec tries to describe Morris, the landlord doesn't recognize him. Instead, he describes a young man around Penny's age named Lucas Phillips. He also notes that after Lucas's murder, Penny was devastated and spent weeks in depression. Inside the apartment, Morgan spots something odd. Penny owns expensive shoes and a luxury purse, yet she lives in a run-down part of town. Credit card bills scattered on the counter confirm that Morris wasn't the one funding her lifestyle. Penny was drowning in debt to maintain appearances. Even stranger, her bills show she was paying $2,500 for a billboard on PCH. The team struggles to understand why Penny would hide her true identity, date a wealthy man, and yet drive herself into debt to project a certain image. Then, while shifting clothes in the wardrobe, Morgan makes a discovery. A hidden photo board, revealing that Penny had secretly been investigating the cold case murder of her boyfriend Lucas. Back at the station, the team studies Penny's photo board and realizes the $2,500 billboard she'd been paying for was actually a memorial to her late boyfriend Lucas. They revisit his case. Lucas was found dead 2 years ago, just after the 4th of July. Police at the time believed he was robbed on the beach and struck in the head with a blunt object sometime after 10 p.m., eerily similar to what happened to Penny, except she hadn't been robbed. Karadec suggests the attacker in Lucas's case may have staged it to look like a robbery, and now there's a real possibility both assaults were committed by the same person. As Morgan examines the old crime scene photos, she notices something odd: tiny grains of rice in Lucas's hair. She's puzzled about how it got there, but makes a mental note of it. The team also learns that Lucas had been working as a tennis coach at the Marina Azul Beach Club during the 2 years before his death. Investigators back then cleared all the club members with solid alibis, but Penny clearly hadn't been convinced. Her board was covered with photos of people from the club, suggesting she suspected someone inside. To get close to them, Penny reinvented herself, changing her name, appearance, and even dating Morris to afford the elite club's expensive membership. At the Marina Azul Beach Club, Morgan and Karadec meet Edward, who runs the club, and his brother, Blaine, the head of guest services. Edward insists the club has no connection to the public beach where the attacks happened, since members use a private beach. Blaine recognizes Penny as Morris's girlfriend, but can't provide much else. When shown Lucas's photo, both brothers admit they remember him, but after 2 years, they claim they have no useful information to offer. As Morgan and Karadec prepare to leave, Morgan notices a club attendant sporting a fresh black eye. When asked, he explains he was attacked by Cameron Smith, better known as Swizz, a man known for dealing illegal goods on the beach. The attendant says Swizz shows up in the same spot every day, and the fight happened around 10 p.m., about an hour before Penny's assault. Morgan theorizes with Karadec that if Swizz was there during both Lucas's and Penny's attacks, he might have witnessed something critical. Back at the station, Swizz explains that he ran into Penny around 9 p.m. that night. She often accused him of Lucas's murder. He insists the only reason he went to the club was to confront Blaine, who'd been avoiding him for weeks over unpaid debt. At the hospital, Penny tells the team that she had received a call from someone using the number on Lucas's billboard, promising new information about his death. That's why she went to the beach. But when she arrived, she was struck from behind, knocked into the water, and barely remembers anything after that. The last thing she recalls is the sensation of being in the ocean. She also reveals that Lucas had unresolved issues with Blaine, who had once threatened to fire him. Back at the club, Morgan and Karadec confront Sherry, a woman featured on Penny's board. Sherry admits she bribed Lucas with her real diamond necklace in exchange for his silence. Lucas had discovered her affair with Blaine, and if her husband, a city council member, had found out, the club would have lost its liquor license. This revelation gives Blaine a strong motive. Re-examining the original crime scene photos, Morgan makes a disturbing observation. Lucas's shorts were damp, but his hair was completely dry. If he had been killed on the beach around 10 p.m., his body would have been lying there all night, exposed to the high tides at both 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. the following day. His body should have been soaked, but it wasn't. This leads Morgan to conclude that either the time of death was wrong, or Lucas was killed elsewhere and his body transported to the beach later. After a long night investigating with Karadec, Morgan has a breakthrough. She theorizes that Lucas was killed with a snow globe. She explains that historically, manufacturers experimented with different materials to make the snow inside float, including rice. That would explain the grains of rice found in Lucas's hair. Even more telling, traces of glycol, an ingredient in antifreeze commonly used in snow globes to keep the liquid from freezing, were discovered in Lucas's nasal passages. Morgan recalls seeing a collection of souvenirs in Edward's office from his travels. Italy, France, and Spain were all represented, but there was nothing from Greece, despite Edward boasting. She concludes the missing souvenir was a snow globe, the very weapon used in Lucas's murder. Putting the pieces together, Morgan theorizes that Lucas had finally reached his breaking point with Blaine and tried confronting Edward about it. In order to protect his brother, Edward killed Lucas, and with Penny determined to expose the truth, Edward lured her to the beach by posing as an informant, then attacked her to silence her. The investigation culminates in a tense pursuit, with Edward cornered on a cliff overlooking the beach. Using Blaine as leverage, the team convinces Edward to stand down. He surrenders and is taken into custody, finally bringing justice for Lucas and Penny. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sandy's Timeline for more breakdowns and theories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. We've got plenty more mysteries to dive into. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next recap.